basically, to start off, how I got on this path of research in my late teens, early 20s, my sister and current brother-in-law turned me on to a book called The Emperor Wears No Clothes by Jack Hare, subtitled Hemp and the Marijuana Conspiracy. And they told me at the time that, and marijuana could be used for making clothes and paper and rope and all of these things. And I told my sister and her husband that they were crazy and didn't really believe what they had to say, in high school and the like. I definitely had my dabble in cannabis and other things, and never really had heard anything of the sort. And so it was probably 6 months later, I had traveled up to Northern California to visit my sister at her home, and they pulled out a copy of this book, Jack Hare's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and they showed it to me. And then I sat there and flipped through it and was kind of amazed, and then I drove downtown to the local bookstore and found a copy of it there and bought it, and went outside to the parking lot and sat there and read for probably 2 or 3 hours until it was near pitch black outside and I couldn't see another thing anymore. And that really opened my eyes to the suppressed information of industrial hemp and medical marijuana, and the current affairs in our political system weren't as we believed them to be. Right. And I was probably 18 or 19 at the time, and then by the time I was 22, I had met and become good friends with Jack Hare, and he and I have been close friends for just about 15 years now. And working with him, and I worked with the hemp movement, and I was a coordinator for the California Hemp Initiative and helped with California's Prop 215 for medical marijuana. And the research just sort of continued. The rabbit hole continued to get deeper and go further. And originally, the reason why I started researching heavily into hemp and fact-checking Jack Hare's research was that on the back of his book in the 90s, he had a challenge for $10,000 for anybody to prove his research wrong. And today that challenge stands at $100,000. And you can find the challenge on Jack Hare's website and on the back of his book, etc. And it says, a $100,000 challenge to the world to prove us wrong. If all fossil fuels and their derivatives, as well as trees for paper and construction, were banned in order to save the planet, reverse the greenhouse effect, stop deforestation, then there is only one known annual renewable natural resource that is capable of providing the overall majority of the world's paper and textiles, meet all of the world's transportation, industrial, and home energy needs, while simultaneously reducing pollution, rebuilding the soil, and cleaning the atmosphere all at the same time. And that substance is the same one that did it all before, cannabis, hemp, marijuana. And, to say the least, that challenge has been around for close to 20 years now, and Jack Hare has yet to have any takers. So, that's really how I got started, and following Jack's research, and the rabbit hole just kept going deeper, and so that's what led me into initially hemp research, and then, as we'll discuss later, into what's known as ethnomycology, which is the study of the cultural use of mushrooms, and then archaeoastronomy or astrotheology, which is archaeoastronomy is the study of the use of the stars in the heavens for the measurements of time and the creation of calendars, etc. And astrotheology is basically how the knowledge of the stars and the sun and the moon and the heavens were anthropomorphized into god deities.
And that information really goes way back.
It goes way back. Well, for instance, I suppose we should start with hemp. The record that archaeologists can trace back for the use of hemp industrially for woven fabric and for lamp oil and using the seed for food, etc., dates back to at least 10,000 years. And so, our humankind really has a direct association with the use of cannabis as our primary support for life as far back as we can trace time. And really, it's only been since 1937, and there were some other prohibitions here and there scattered throughout the world, but none like today, up until 1937. So, basically, hemp was widespread throughout the world for 10,000 years up until this century. So, here we are today.
So, is there any record of how this plant was found? Was it? I mean, I would imagine it was growing wild, and that people over time just found that it had a number of uses, and made uses. Is there any record as to how this plant initially was used? I mean, what would have been the first use of it?
Go ahead.
What would have been the first use of it?
The first use of it, I'm guessing, would probably have been nomads or hunter-gatherers, basically gathering food supplies and things like that, and especially fuel for the fire. And obviously throwing the cannabis plant on the fire would induce a state of ecstasy that would obviously trigger them to recognize it as the source of something other,
Right.
And, it's really hard to say exactly what was used first, but like I said, we do have reference to woven fabric dating back 10,000 years from hemp, and cauldrons with seeds and stalks that were burned. What they would do is make these little tents or go into caves and basically throw the cannabis on a central fire and then smoke themselves, fill the room with smoke until they achieve the state that they were looking for. The records of the first cannabis paper date back in China, I believe, to 1000 or 1400 BC. And it's argued that China and India were far more advanced intellectually than the Europeans because of their much earlier discovery of paper, and most of the original paper was made from hemp and obviously papyrus, which is where we get the word paper from, but the primary source for paper was definitely cannabis.
Is there one particular property in this plant that gives it, that allows it to have so many different uses? Is it something in it that in the fibers, or I mean, obviously the seeds have an effect, but the fibers, I mean, have so many different uses. Is there one particular property of that plant that makes it special?
Well, there's a lot of different properties, but one is that other than a couple of strains of bamboo and maybe moss, it's really the fastest out-of-water growing plant that we know of. Cannabis can reach 14 to 20 feet or more in under 3 months.
Wow!
But you mentioned the fiber, and the fiber in cannabis is the longest, strongest natural fiber known to man. And so, if we look back through history, most of the ship sails, I think 90% of the ship sails were made from cannabis. The rest being made from things like flax and sisal and jute. We can look at things like the ancient Gutenberg Bibles that were made from hemp for the paper. But the core of the woody core of the hemp plant, which is inside the fibers. The fiber is really the bark of the plant, and the woody core is 80% of the plant, and that's 77% cellulose. And cellulose is used for paper and for making plastics, and it was originally used for making dynamite and just about anything you can imagine.